Katha Upanishad, Chapter 2, Section 3, Verse number 1. Urdhva mūlo vākashāka esho shvatah sanātanah tadev shukram tad brahma tad ivamritam uchyate tasmin lokāh shritāh sarve tad unatyeti kaśčana etad vaitat. So here, Urdhva Mūlo. Mūlo means roots. Urdhva means above. Vak Shaka. Shaka means branches. Vak meaning downwards. Esho Shvataha meaning this sacred fig tree. Sanatanaha means eternal. Tad eva, that indeed is. Shukram meaning pure. That is Brahma, Tad Brahma. Tad Ivamritam, that is immortal. That's what it's said. Uchyate means that is said. Tasmin lokaha shritaha sarve. Tasmin means in it. Lokaha shritaha sarve, all the worlds rest. Sarve lokaha shritaha. All the worlds reside or rest in that, in Brahma. Tad unatyeti kaśčana, and no one ever goes beyond it. So here, the literal meaning of this verse is that with the roots above and branches below, Urdhva Mūlo, roots above, Vak Shaka and branches below, this sacred fig tree remains eternal. That indeed is pure. That is immortal. That is called Brahma. In it, all the worlds reside and nothing ever goes beyond it. Natyeti kaśčana. So this verse talks about the tree of life. I am sure you must have read it in Bhagavad Gita about it too. The verses 1 to 3 of chapter 15 talk about this tree of life. This concept of tree of life is also found in other cultures. If we go deeper into its meaning, this verse compares Brahma or Supreme Self with a tree turned upside down, the roots above and branches below. The roots signify the unmanifested Brahma, and the rest of the tree as the manifested world we see. As our consciousness arises, it takes us above towards the unmanifested roots. That's why the inverted tree analogy. As we evolve, we go from the manifested lower realm to the unmanifested upper realm and realize the Brahma that only our consciousness can feel. The roots, just like the absolute Brahm, are the source of existence, even though we cannot see them. The leaves, branches, fruits, flowers of that tree are like the transient world, just like our lives that come and go. Just like old age, leaves fall off the tree and new ones take their place. Similarly, our bodies die and our soul takes home in new ones, or the liberated ones dissolve within the roots. So this is a very metaphorical analogy of the manifested and unmanifested Brahma. Verse number 2 and 3. Yad idam kincha jagat sarvam pran ejati nihashritam mahad bhayyam vajram udyatam ya etad vidur amritaste bhavanti भयाद अस्याग्निस्तपति भयात् तपति सूर्यः भयाद इन्द्रश्च वायुश्च मृत्युर्धावति पंचमः. So here in verse number 2, let's get down to the meanings first. Yad idam kincha jagat sarvam. All this universe that there is, Jagat Sarvam meaning all this universe that there is, Yat Idam. Prana Ejati Nishritam. Prana here is used in place of the absolute Brahma. Ejati meaning moves. Nihashritam means emerge. Mahad Bhayyam, great fear. Mahad means great, Bhayyam means fear. Vajram Udyatam means lightning, thunderbolt. Ya etad vidur, who knows this? Amritaste, attain immortality. Amritas meaning immortality. So here in verse number 2, which says that this entire universe, whatever here exists, emerges and moves in absolute Brahma. This Brahma, here called as Prana, is the great fear, just like thunderbolt. And those who realize this become immortal. So Brahma here is referred to as Pran because he is the life giver. He is the life source of every existence. The source of this evolution, the source of existence is Brahma. Scientifically, we know that there is such order in this cosmic world. And this order is amidst all the chaos, isn't it? And it's so ironic. What holds the sun in its place? What is that which makes the planets and satellites move? Why is there day and night going on undisrupted since millions of ages? How these phenomena are sustained? Yes, we know about the magnetic forces and other forces that keep these going. But then who controls these forces? Where did these forces come into play? Where did they come from? Who is keeping them sustained? Who is keeping them moving? We humans are simply unraveling the science behind these workings. We are not creating anything new. We are just playing with the energies already present here. So where is energy being created from? We have heard of this law, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. But yes, it must have been created sometime. Otherwise, it wouldn't have existed. So that's the question, where is this energy being created from? Who created this energy? So that energy, that creation is Brahma, absolute Brahma, which is the source and controller of everything that happens here. So coming to verse number 3. Bhayyad asyagnis. Bhayyad meaning from the fear of him fire burns. Agnis meaning agni, fire burns. Tapati means burns. Bhayat tapati suryaha. Bhayat again means through fear. The sun gives heat. Suryaha tapati. Bhayad indrascha vayuscha. Even Indra, the god of the gods, and wind and death, Mrityu meaning death, all run, all move due to the fear of Brahma. So basically what they are trying to say is everything is Brahma, it's because of him we are there and everything moves in him because of him. So the literal meaning of this verse is from fear of him is the Supreme Self, the Absolute Brahm, the fire burns and the sun gives heat. And through fear of him, Indra, that is the god of gods, wind and death move on their ways. As we go deeper into the meaning of this verse, it means that all the evolution, all the natural phenomena, be it the sun shining or wind blowing or changing of seasons, even the time and manner of death, everything is decided or controlled by the absolute Brahma. He is the ultimate law. He governs the nature. He controls life and death. He is there in everyone. He is there in everything. Rather, He is everything. Shlok number 4 and 5. Iha ched ashkad bodham prak sharirasya visrasaha ततः सर्गेषु लोकेषु शरीरत्वाय कल्पते यथा दर्शे तथात्मनि यथा स्वप्ने तथा पितृलोके यथाप्सु परिवददृशे तथा गन्धर्वलोके छाया तपयोरिव भ्रमलोके. So here in verse number 4 and 5, both these verses, they talk about perceiving the Supreme Self. So in verse number 4, Iha means here and now. Ashakad means one can succeed. Bodha meaning in knowing. Prak sharirasya visrasaha meaning before the shedding of the body, before death. Sargeshu means in this manifested world. Sargeshu lokeshu, in this manifested world. Sharirattvaya meaning embodiment, taking another body. Kalpate meaning becoming fit. So there are various translations to this particular verse, and one of the most accepted translation is, if one succeeds, ashakad, if one succeeds in realizing this Supreme Self here and now, meaning in this life, before the death of the body, then his soul gets liberated. Else, he comes into this manifested world, Sargeshu Lokeshu, his soul taking another body, embodiment here, Sharirattvaya. So his soul will take another body, another lifetime to realize the subtle truth of Brahma. However, there are different translations to this verse. Some of the translations say that if one realizes the Supreme Self before shedding of the body, he will possess such power that he enters into everything. Basically, it means that the individual self will merge with the Supreme Self once liberated. In either of these translations, the verse is telling us that it is very much possible to attain Brahmagyan, the wisdom of realizing the Supreme Self here and now in this lifetime before shedding our bodies. It is totally up to us how we want to use this life of ours. In fact, there is a similar verse in Katha Upanishad that says that if one is able to realize the Supreme Self, he has access to everything and unlimited freedom just like God. But if only he reaches the goal. So coming to verse number 5, Yatha Darshe, meaning as, just like. Yatha means just like or as the glass. Tathatmani, similarly in the self, in the mind. Yatha Swapne, as in dreams. Swapne meaning dreams. Tatha Pitraloke, similarly in the world of ancestors. Pitraloke meaning world of ancestors. Yathapsu, just like the reflection in the water. That's the meaning of Yathapsu. Pariva Dadrishe, hazy. Tatha Gandharvaloke, similarly in the world of Gandharvs, that is the world of gods. Chhaya Tapayor, meaning Chhaya is shade, Tapayor is light. Just like in Eva, meaning just like in Brahmaloke, in the world of Brahma. So this verse describes how one can experience the Supreme Self in different worlds. Do you remember the verse number 14 we just did in the section 2 of chapter 2? Where it was asked how to realize the Supreme Self. Does it shine itself or in reflection? So this verse partly answers that query. It says that the Supreme Self can be seen as a reflection in a glass, just like a reflection in a glass, not a mirror, in a glass, by a pure mind, or in a dream in the world of ancestors. Or it can just be seen as a hazy reflection in water in the world of gods, or as clearly as shade and light, darkness and light in the world of Brahma. So here in this verse, you can see how the perception and experience of Brahm is changing as we move towards the higher worlds. However, sage Ramanuja describes Yatha Darshe not as glass but just like a new moon light, where you can make out things only dimly and not very clearly. In either of those meanings, whether it's a glass or it's a new moon light, what this verse is telling us that in our mind, in our intellect, we cannot make out the Supreme Self very clearly. We cannot perceive the Supreme Self very clearly. Why is that so? Because in this manifested world, our individual soul, senses, sense objects, our mind, our body, everything is so mingled with one another that it becomes difficult to separate them and reach the individual soul. So only when this mirror of mind gets clean and regular meditation helps quicken this process, one can perhaps see the reflection of the Supreme Self. This is what our purpose of life is, to evolve, to clean the mirror of mind, to purify our mind so that we can see and realize the reality, which is the absolute Brahma. Shlok number 6. Indriyanam prithag bhavam udayastamayo cha yat prithag utpadyamananam matva dhiro na shochati. So here Indriyanam means the senses. Prithag bhavam means the separate nature. Prithag bhav, separate nature. Udaya astam, meaning rising and setting. Udaya astam, rising and setting. Prithag utpadya mananam means the arising of these senses. Utpad meaning arising of these senses, the source of these senses. Matva dhiro na shochati, the wise man does not grieve. So here this verse again emphasizes that the material senses are different from the self. The material senses are basically separate from our individual self, from our Atma. The rising and setting of desires of various senses are just limited to the senses, and they do not go deeper to the Atma. They have nothing to do with the Atma. If there is sorrow or pain, it is just limited to the material senses. Your Atma or self is not affected by it, and so is pleasure. A wise man realizes this, that the self, that the individual self or Atma is different from the senses, and thus is free from all the sorrow and pain. Verse number 7 and 8. Indriyebhyah param mano manasah sattvam uttamam satvadadhi mahanatma mahato avyaktam uttamam avyaktat tu parah purusho vyapako alinga evacha yam gyatva muchyate jantur amritatvam cha gacchati. So here in verse number 7, Indriyebhyah. Indriya means senses. Param means superior. Mano is mind. So beyond the senses is the mind. Indriyebhyah param mano. Manasah Sattvam Uttamam. Sattvam means the essence. So here they are talking about the essence of mind. So what's the essence of mind? That's the intellect. Uttamam means superior. So here they say above the mind is its essence, that is the intelligence. Sattva dadhi mahan atma. Here Adhi means higher. So beyond this intelligence is the Mahan Atma. Mahan Atma is the individual self. Mahato avyaktam uttamam. Avyaktam means unmanifest. So beyond this individual self is the unmanifest. So this verse number 7 is again emphasizing the spiritual hierarchy in which the material senses are at the lowest level. Beyond the senses lies the mind. Beyond this mind is the intelligence or buddhi. And beyond intelligence is the Mahan Atma or Jivatma, that is the individual self. And beyond this Jivatma is the unmanifest. So this is the ladder of spiritual evolution, where step by step one goes beyond the material senses, then mind, then intelligence, and finally realize the existence of the individual self or Atma. So this verse continues to verse number 8, where you can see it's written Avyaktat tu paraha purusho. Avyaktat again means unmanifest. Paraha means beyond. So it says the Purush is beyond the unmanifest. Purush meaning energy. Vyapako means omnipresent. Alinga means having no identification. That is what Alinga means. Yam Gyatva, one who knows this. Jantur is living being. So Yam Gyatva, the living being who knows this fact or realizes this, gets liberated. Muchyate, that means liberated, and attains immortality. Amritatvam gacchati. So here in verse number 8, which is the continuation of the previous verse, it says that beyond the unmanifest is Purush, which is present everywhere and in everything. And this Purusha is without any attribute or without any identification tag. And by realizing this fact fully, a man gets liberated. If you remember, we did similar verses in chapter 1, section 3. The verse number 10 and 11, they spoke about the spiritual ladder of evolution, where indriya senses are at the lowest level, and then is the mind, and then is the intellect, then the individual self, the soul, Atma, and then the Avyak, unmanifest, and beyond the unmanifest is the Purusha, that's energy. So this is a kind of repetition of those two previous verses. Verse number 9. Na samdrishe tishtati rupamasya na chakshusha pashyati kaschanainam Hilda manisha manasabhiklipto ya etat viduramritaste bhavanti. Here, samdrishe means vision. Tishtati meaning exist. Asya rupam, his form. Rupam is form, asya meaning his. His implies the Supreme Self. Chakshusha, physical eyes. Pashyati meaning perceiving, seeing. Kascha nainam, kascha meaning nobody can. Kascha nainam means nobody can see. Hirda means heart. Manisha means thought or intuitive vision. And Manasa means mind. Abhiklipto means he is revealed. He is seen. Etat vidur, which means those who know become immortal. Amritas te bhavanti. So here in verse number 9, it says, the form of Supreme Self does not exist as a vision or perception. No one can see him with physical eyes. Only by the heart or thought or mind can he be revealed. And one who knows him becomes immortal. So the first half of this verse says categorically that one cannot see or visualize the Supreme Self. And in the second half it says that one can still realize him by heart, by intuitive vision, and by meditation. So when one meditates and focuses the mental powers, then true insight of that Supreme Self will automatically emerge in our consciousness. As Adi Shankaracharya also said, when the mind becomes clear and the heart pure, God vision arises. Also, someone has aptly said, as the concept of God is formed by our mental nature, everyone will have a different image or a concept of God emerging in the mind. It cannot be identical for all. And this understanding develops a lot of open-mindedness and non-judgmental attitude within us. Verse number 10 and 11. Yada panchavatisthante jnanani manasa sah buddhischa na vicheshtati tam ahuha paramam gatim tam yogam iti manyate sthiram indriya dharanam apramatah tada bhavati yogo hi prabhavapyayo. So here these two verses are describing the state of yoga, popularly called as yoga. So in verse number 10, yada means when. Yada panchavatisthante. Vatisthante meaning at rest. What is at rest? The senses together with the mind. Manasa saha. Manasa meaning mind, saha means together. So when the five senses are at rest, pancha here means five senses. Buddhist means intellect. So here it means when the five sources of knowledge, meaning these sense organs that take in and transport to the mind what they see, hear, feel or smell. So when these five sources of knowledge that work in tandem with the mind, they stop their work or they are at rest, and even intellect gets silent. Buddhischa na vicheshtati. Even intellect is not acting. It is then that one has reached the higher state. When your mind is quiet like silent water, where there are no ripples of thoughts, your mind gets absolutely devoid of any thought. When your sense organs close themselves to the world and you are not aware what is going around you, it is then that you have reached a higher state where you become aware of your individual self, of your Atma. So this is what what our purpose of meditation is, to reach that state and become aware of the Atma inside us. So in verse number 11, tam yogam, tam meaning that state, yogam is to be yoga. Iti manyate, it is considered. Manyate means considered. Sthiram indriya dharanam, meaning steady control of the senses. Indriya meaning senses. Sthiram meaning control. Apramataha meaning undistracted or focused concentration. Tada means then. Bhavati is one becomes. So, here in verse number 11, which says it's a continuation of verse 10, it says that this steady control of the senses, sthiram indriya dharanam, this steady control of the senses is considered to be yoga. Tam yogam iti manyate. This is what yoga is. Then one becomes mindful and undistracted. Apramataha tada bhavati. But this yoga comes and goes. Yogo hi prabhavapyayo. It comes and goes. That's the meaning of this. So what's the meaning of this comes and goes? So let me elaborate upon this. The natural tendency of mind is to wander. And the natural tendency of our senses is to accumulate sensations from outside us, isn't it? That is the default mode of senses and of our mind. So such steady control of senses, even if you're controlling it, it does not remain so for all the time, isn't it? For example, you meditate for 30 minutes daily, say, and out of those 30 minutes, you realize that you were in the yoga state for only 10 minutes, when your mind and your senses had stopped working. What about the rest of the time? And what about the rest of the day? Are you back to the unsteadiness of the senses and mind? You know the answer to that best. And so you can very well understand that such a state of yoga fluctuates. Sometimes it's there, that steady control, sometimes it is not there. And that is what exactly is mentioned in this verse. That this yoga or this steady control comes and goes. However, if we try to keep our mind pure, bring discipline to our daily routine, we can probably acquire this steady control not just for a few minutes, but for our entire life. For that, probably we need to be mindful, focus on 100% focus on whatever we are doing at the moment. That is mindfulness. That probably will help in maintaining a steady control over our senses and our mind too. Verse number 12. Neva vacha na manasa praptum shakyo na chakshusha asti ti bruvato anyatra katham tad upalabhyate. So here, neva vacha means not by speech. Neva means not. Vacha means speech. Na manasa, not by mind. Manasa means mind. Praptum, can be attained. Na chakshusha, and not by eyes or sight. Chakshusha means eyes. Anyatra, anyatra means except. Katham tad upalabhyate. Upalabhyate means can be comprehended. How then? Katham tad means how then he be comprehended except anyatra, except by who says astiti bruvato. He is. Asti iti. Okay, so verse number 12. The literal meaning of this verse is not by speech, not by mind, and not by eyes can he be revealed. How then? Katham tad, how then can he be comprehended except by the one who says, He is, thou art? So here this verse is talking about the existence of the Supreme Self. There is no solid proof or scientific proof of his existence except for the one who affirms that he is. This Supreme Self can only be realized through yoga and not by ordinary earthly proofs or our limited minds. How can we ever comprehend this ultimate infinite reality of Brahm through our finite senses? Is that even possible? Think about it. Saint Bernard has very aptly spoken on this issue. In his words, he says, "Who is God? I can think of no better answer than He who is. Nothing is more appropriate to the eternity which God is. If you call God good or great or blessed or wise or anything similar to this, it is included in these words, namely, He is." Quote unquote Saint Bernard. You must have read about the scientific law of energy. That energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but can only change from one form to another or transferred from one object to another. Doesn't it sound like the philosophy here, which we have been talking about till now? This energy around us in every form, be it living or non-living, the vibrations our thoughts are creating in this cosmos, all this is God or the Supreme Brahma. He is there everywhere, in each one of us. He is there in everything, in every breath we take in every breath we give out. He is Asti Iti. Verse number 13. Asti tvevopalabdhavyas tattva bhavena chobhayoha. Asti tvevopalabdhasya tattva bhavaha prasidati. So here, Asti tvevo palabdhavyas, meaning he should be comprehended only as existent. Tattva bhavain, tattva bhav meaning real nature. Chobhayo, in both ways. The Supreme must be comprehended as existent and in his real nature. So the literal meaning of this verse is, the Supreme should be comprehended initially as existent and then realized as he really is, the real nature that is. So when he is comprehended as existent, his real nature becomes clear later on. So here I am explaining this verse in someone else's words. I've borrowed these words from somewhere else because they perfectly explain the meaning of this verse. The early stage of a spiritual evolution begins with the primary rational assertion that the self, that the Brahm exists. And we believe this without any further speculation about its nature. Some of these people having this rational conviction in the existence of Brahma want to explore further. And the practice of meditation, they eventually, in their personal spiritual experience, they realize and comprehend the true essence of Brahma, quote unquote. So here, let me try to simplify things. Basically, at first, you cannot understand the real nature of the Supreme Self. So, we believe in certain God. We believe in the existence of certain God. Say Supreme Self or a nameless God. It doesn't matter whatever name you put to that God. But we believe in the existence of a certain God. And then when we want to explore it further, we meditate. We go inside ourselves and then we realize, oh, this is the real nature of Brahm. It's so infinite, it's formless, it cannot be explained or put into words so simply. So that's what this verse is saying. Many people have had this kind of spiritual experience where they have realized God. We say self-realization, or this person is enlightened, isn't it? So what such people comprehend must be naturally beyond words, because till now no one is ever able to reproduce their version of Supreme Self. Or perhaps it is beyond our limited minds to understand what they say. The journey to realization of that supreme reality, Brahm, is different for each one of us. We have to find our own ways to reach it, to realize it. People or gurus or guides can probably help you up to a certain point. They can guide you up to a certain point. But beyond that, it's up to you to grope your own path, to find your own way. There are as many ways as there are people here. And whenever you feel lost or short of answers, remember that all the answers lie inside you. Just silence the mind and senses and connect to your individual self. You will find whatever you have been looking for in life. Verse number 14 and 15. यदा सर्वे प्रमुच्यन्ते कामायेस्य हृदि श्रिताः अथ मर्तयो अमृतो भवति अत्र ब्रह्म समश्नुते यदा सर्वे प्रभिद्वन्ते हृदयस्येह ग्रन्थयः अथ मर्तयो अमृतो भवते एतावद् अनुशासनम्. So here in verse number 14, Yada sarve pramuchyante. Yada means when. All desires. Sarve meaning all. Kama means desires. When all desires fall off. Pramuchyante means fall off. All the desires that lie in the heart. Hridi shritaha. Hridi shrita meaning lie in the heart. Then, atha means then. mortal becomes immortal. Martayo amrito bhavate. Atra Brahma samasnute, and attains the state of Brahma. Atra Brahma samasnute meaning attaining the state of Brahma. So here, the literal meaning of this verse is, when all the desires that lie within the heart fall off, then the mortal becomes immortal and attains the state of Brahma. So when all the obstructions in our path to Brahma are removed, then the supreme truth or the vision of God, vision of Brahma appears on its own. What are these obstructions in our spiritual journey? Our desires, ignorance, anger, ego, greed, jealousy, doubt, all these stop us from reaching the individual self or Atma. When we begin to remove each of them, our view of God, our view of Brahma starts clearing. And once all these obstructions are removed, we are able to realize this infinite, ultimate, nameless, formless reality. And this is what enlightenment is, perhaps. And this infinite reality of Brahma was perhaps experienced by people like Gautam Buddha, Meera, Kabir, Ramakrishna Paramhans. And oh my God, what an experience that must have been. So coming to verse number 15, which means Yada Sarve, when all the knots of the heart, Sarve meaning all, Granthaya means knots, Hridaya, Syeha means of the heart. So when all the knots of the heart are shattered, Prabhidvante, meaning shattered. Atha martayo amrito bhavati. Then, atha means then, the mortal becomes immortal. Martayo amrito bhavati. Etavad anushasanam. These two words mean, thus far is the teaching. Etavad anushasanam. Thus far is the teaching. So, when all the knots of the heart are cut apart, then the mortal becomes immortal. This is the teaching till now. Let me elaborate upon these lines to make them clearer. What it is trying to say is that when all the biases of ours are removed, biases related to religion, bias related to this entire world, our ego that gives us the satisfaction of an identity also gets dissolved completely. When we don't identify ourselves with our country, our religion, our caste, our community, or family, our status, our money, our qualifications, and even our mind and intellect, it is then that this ego has completely dissolved. When the chains of ignorance around us are broken, the chain of attachment, the chain of desire, the chain of greed, all these chains are broken. It is then the Atma emerges from inside. When the mist of this unreal world is removed and we can see the real without any adulteration, it is then that our Atma comes forth for liberation. It is then that we merge with the Supreme Brahma. So this is the meaning of the knots of the heart. Basically, all these ego, bias, all our desires and ignorance, all these things, these are binding our heart, these are chaining our heart So we need to unchain everything, become free, and see our own Atma in its real self. The second line implies that the teachings of Upanishads finish here. Etavad Anushasanam. However, there are 3 more verses left in Katha Upanishad. So they must have been a later, much later addition. In fact, the original Katha Upanishad was considered to have ended with the chapter 1. Even this chapter 2 we are talking about is considered a later addition. Verse number 16. शतं चैका च हृदयस्य नाड्यस्य तासां मूर्धानम् अभिनिह श्रितैकाः तयो ऊर्ध्वम् आयन् अमृतत्वमेति विश्वन् अन्या उत्क्रमणे भवन्ति. So here shatam means 100, cha means and, Eka means 1. So 101. So Hridayasya Narayas meaning heart chakra, the psychic channels. You can consider them as psychic channels. Tasam, of these. Murdhanam meaning going towards the head. Abhiniha Shritaika, existing through or leading through the head. Tayo, through the channel. Tayo means through. Urdhvam Ayan, meaning going upward. Urdhvam Ayan meaning going upward. Urdhvam means upward. Amritatvam eti, becomes immortal. Amritatvam meaning immortal. Vishwan Anya, Anya meaning others. Others that are going in various directions that lead to rebirth. Utkramane meaning rebirth. Utkramane bhavanti. So here the literal meaning of the verse is 101 are the nadis or the psychic channels of the heart chakra. One of them leads up towards the head. Going upward through that, one becomes immortal. Meaning that at the time of death, the Atma that lies in the heart travels through these psychic channels and goes upwards to the crown of the skull, from where it leaves the body. And this is from where the Atma first entered the mind-body complex, from the crown of the skull. So it is considered that Atma rises to the sun after leaving from the crown of the skull, and this sun is the doorway to Brahma. So in short, if the individual self or Atma leaves the body through the head, then it becomes immortal. If it leaves the body through any other opening, it leads to rebirth. Verse number 17. Angushta matraha purusho antaratma sada jananam hirdaye sannivishtaha tam swach charirat pravrihen munjad iveshikam dhairenaha tam vidyach shukram amritam tam vidyach shukram amritam iti. So here in verse number 17 it says, the person of the size of a thumb, angushta matraha purusho, that is the inner self, antaratma, and that is seated in the heart of all people, Sada Jananam Hirdaye Sannivishtaha. It is always seated in the heart of the people. Tam Swach Charirat. Tam meaning him, as in Brahma. Swach Charirat, from one's own body. Pravrihen, meaning draw out. Like stalk from within the munjad grass. Munjad eveshikam dhairena. Dhairena means firmly. Tam vidyach. Tam again here means him, Brahma. Vidyach meaning one should know him as pure. Shukram means pure. As immortal, Amritam. And there is a repetition of this line, Tam Vidyach Shukram Amritam Iti, which basically signifies the end of the shlok, of the words of this Upanishad. So here, the literal meaning of this verse is, the person of the size of thumb, that is the individual self, the Antaratma, is always seated in the heart of all people. Him one should draw out with firmness, like the stalk from within the munja grass. Him one should know as pure and immortal. Yes, him one should know as pure and immortal. So this is the literal meaning of this verse. In this verse, Yamraj emphasizes that we should make an effort to realize this individual self or Atma inside us. That is pure, that is part of Supreme Self, which is immortal. This Atma is neither born nor does it die with the body. He emphasizes to realize that this Atma differs from the mind-body complex, which will disintegrate one day, unlike the Atma. Verse number 18. Mrityu proktam nachiketo atha labdhava vidyametam yoga vidhim cha krishtanam Brahma prapto virajo abhut vimrityor anyopyevyam yo ved adhyatmam eva. So here, mrityu proktam, meaning as imparted by the god of death. Nachiketa attained. Labdhava meaning attained. The knowledge of Brahma, Vidyam Etam, and the knowledge of Yoga, Yoga Vidhim. And thus he attained Brahma, Brahma Prapto, and he became immortal. And so anyone else can become Anyopyevyam. So, this verse number 18, the last verse of Katha Upanishad, says that Nachiketa, having attained the knowledge of Brahma and the method of yoga, as explained by the Lord of Death, attained immortality. He is liberated from passion and from death. And so are many others who have imbibed this knowledge. This is the last verse of Katha Upanishad, and it emphasizes on the fact that the path to liberation is open to one and all. One just needs to follow the method of yoga, go within oneself, realize the individual self inside, and that is the password to reaching the ultimate, the infinite reality, Brahma. Let's end this Katha Upanishad with the shlok with which we started. ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधितमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।